Everything we've covered so far, applied lamb, KLA, lives inside the fab. They build and inspect the wafer. But there's a whole second world after the chip is finished, and before it ships to a customer, test. Somebody has to prove the chip actually works. And as AI chips get more complex, that's become a real, separate pick-and-shovel toll.
And it's a clean duopoly. Two companies split something like 80+% of the automated test equipment market. Advantest, the memory and HBM test king, and Teradyne, the leader in testing the AI compute chips with a robotics arm bolted on. Two very different bets on the same trend. Let's do both. Disclaimer first. First, a quick and honest word. Everything you're about to hear is really just the two of us thinking out loud. Personal market commentary, made for learning and for fun. It isn't investment advice, and it isn't a recommendation.
And when we talk about a specific company, it's only ever to make a bigger idea click, never a nudge to buy or to sell. So take it as a starting point for your own curiosity. Do your own research and make the call that's right for you.
Quick and clear. Education and entertainment only, not investment advice. Advantest and Teradyne are public examples to teach this layer, never recommendations. No buy or sell calls, no price targets. One practical note. Advantest is primarily Tokyo listed, with a thinner American depository receipt, so figures and tickers need extra care. Verify everything live. Do your own research.
Let's start with why test suddenly matters, because for decades it was a small, almost boring back-end cost. HBM and AI changed that in two specific ways. First, known good die. Before you stack memory dies into an HBM tower, every single die has to be proven good, because one bad die scraps the whole expensive stack. So HBM needs testing before the stack and after the stack.
And second, system-level test. An AI GPU or an HBM module can't just be poked at the wafer level. It has to be tested under real thermal, voltage, and workload conditions, the way it'll actually run. That's a whole new, growing test step. Put those together, and you get the key idea. Test intensity. The test dollars per chip rises with HBM stack height and AI complexity. It's the same intensity rises with complexity dynamic as KLA's just moved to the back end. More HBM means more testers.
And there's a brutal economic logic underneath it. The whole point of an HBM stack is that it's expensive and high value, so the cost of not catching a bad die is enormous. You'd rather spend more on test than ship a $1,000 module with a tiny flaw buried in it. That asymmetry is exactly what lets the test companies charge for more and more thorough testing. Quality anxiety, basically, is their pricing power. And the two companies divide the spoils along a clean line. Advantest dominates memory test, the pure expression of the memory makers must expand. Teradyne leads in system-on-chip and compute test, the chips that use the memory, especially custom AI silicon, and it has a robotics business on the side.
So, if you're following the memory money specifically, Advantest is the more direct play. If you're following the broader AI compute and automation money, Teradyne is the wider net. Same duopoly, two different flavors of the AI build. Let's take them one at a time. Advantest first. It's the #1 test company overall, around half the total market. And it's the benchmark in memory, with something like 60 to 70% share there. Its big platforms are an SoC and HBM tester family and a high pin count memory tester. And it's a critical supplier to the names you'd expect, the leading AI chip maker for its newest accelerators, plus Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron for validating their HBM.
And the growth has been remarkable. Its sales for the year were guided up around 26%, with record profits, riding the HBM and AI wave directly. When test is 60 to 70% yours in the exact product that's exploding, you ride the explosion. A little history. Advantest started in 1954 as Takeda Riken, entered semiconductor test in 1972, and took the Advantest name in 1985. It's a Tokyo company, around 7,500 employees, and over the decades, it grew into the global test leader, especially in memory.
And the franchise tells the story. Its HBM tester sales have surpassed all rivals, and it's expanding capacity hard, aiming for something like 10,000 SoC testers a year by the end of the decade. That's a company building for a wave it's confident is coming. The platforms have become, in effect, infrastructure for the AI shift, the standard the memory makers test against.
And being Tokyo listed is worth a quick flag for anyone following along. Advantest trades primarily in Japan, with a thinner American depository receipt, so the liquidity and the reporting are a step removed from a typical US name. It doesn't change the quality of the business at all. It just changes how cleanly you can track it and access it. Worth knowing before you go looking for it.
Here's why Advantest is the cleanest test layer expression of our whole thesis. When Korea, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron build out HBM and DRAM, Advantest sells them the testers. And because of known good die and system-level test, the number of testers you need grows superlinearly with stack height. A taller HBM stack doesn't need a little more test, it needs disproportionately more.
So it's the same beautiful dynamic we keep finding in this series. The harder the product gets, the more of the enabler you need per unit. Advantest is, quite literally, the company that gets paid more every time HBM stacks get taller. And HBM stacks are only going one direction. The bull case. HBM and AI test demand, with that rising known good die and system-level test intensity, 60 to 70% memory share with real pricing power, system-level test broadening the total opportunity, and being the scarce, must-have HBM tester supplier.
The bear case, fairly. It's exposed to an HBM overcapacity or order delay. The same 2027 overbuild risk that hangs over this whole layer hits test too. There's China exposure, including emerging Chinese memory makers as customers and the export control overhang. Teradyne and others are trying to catch up in memory test. And after the run, the valuation carries an AI scarcity premium. The cleanest memory test lever, and a cyclical one.
And it's worth being precise about that 2027 risk because it touches the whole layer. If the memory makers overbuild and HBM prices roll over, they don't just slow new fab orders. They can delay test capacity too, since testers are bought against expected output. So test feels an overbuild with a slight lag, but it absolutely feels it. The bull owns the rising intensity story. The bear owns the timing of the cycle. Both are genuinely true at once.
Now, Teradyne, the number 2, at roughly 30 to 35% of the test market, and the leader in a different slice, testing system-on-chip and logic, especially custom AI silicon. It's the test partner for the bespoke chips the big cloud companies are designing for their own data centers. And it has system-level tests too.
But the twist with Teradyne is the second engine, robotics. It owns Universal Robots, the leader in collaborative robots, the cobots that work alongside people, and a maker of autonomous mobile robots. So Teradyne is the only name in this whole enabler series with a genuine physical AI leg. That makes it a broader, stranger bet than a pure test company.
And the compute test side is genuinely well-placed, as every big cloud company designs its own custom AI chip instead of only buying off the shelf. Each new design needs its own test program. So Teradyne benefits from the proliferation of AI silicon, not just the volume of any single chip. The more fragmented and custom the AI chip world gets, the more test programs there are to win. And that fragmentation is exactly the trend right now.
Teradyne is older and more American. It was founded in 1960 in Boston by 2 MIT classmates, and its very first product was a simple go, no-go tester for diodes. It grew over decades through acquisitions across different test niches.
And the defining strategic move was the pivot into robotics, buying Universal Robots in 2015 and the Mobile Robot Company in 2018. That turned a pure test company into a test plus automation hybrid. It's a deliberate bet that the same secular force, automation, driven by AI and labor shortages, would power both halves of the company. Elegant in theory. We'll get to the in practice in the bear case. Structurally, 2 engines. Semiconductor test is the big one. Roughly 70 to 80% of revenue. Testing logic and SoC and analog chips, with the AI compute and custom ASIC work as the growth driver. There's even a collaboration with Tokyo Electron on testing AI and data center chips.
And then industrial automation, the robotics, at maybe 10 to 15%. The cobots and mobile robots are a play on the labor shortage and on factories getting smarter, and it ties straight into the physical AI theme we've talked about elsewhere. It's higher growth in theory, but it's currently small, competitive, and, being honest, it has repeatedly underdelivered against the hype over the years.
Still, the strategic logic is coherent. Both halves ride automation. The same forces, AI, labor shortages, factories getting smarter, that drive demand for testing AI chips also drive demand for robots on the factory floor. Whether the robotics execution finally matches that tidy logic is one of the real open questions on the name. Fairly or not, it's been next year's story for a good while now.
So the key contrast, Teradyne is less memory, more compute. It tests the chips that use HBM, the AI accelerators, rather than the HBM itself. So it rides AI compute proliferation and the explosion of custom hyperscaler silicon more than the memory expansion thesis specifically.
And the robotics arm is real optionality, but it cuts both ways. On the upside, it's a second secular growth story and a physical AI tie-in. On the downside, it muddies the clean semiconductor test story. It's been a serial disappointer, and it can compress the blended margins. So Teradyne is the broader, more diversified, slightly messier bet. Advantest is the purer, sharper one. Teradyne's bull case: AI and custom ASIC test proliferation plus system-level test. The robotics business as a 20 to 30% secular grower on labor shortages and Industry 4.0, and recurring software and service revenue layered on top.
The bear case, a rich forward multiple, in the high 60s on some measures, reflecting a lot of those secular hopes already. Ordinary semiconductor cyclicality, China and export control exposure, and that robotics story, which can commoditize and has, frankly, underdelivered relative to the excitement more than once. A real franchise, with a couple of show-me legs. Now zoom out and place this layer against the WFE trio. Test is a real, separate toll, but it's a smaller market and it sits further from the actual fab capacity build-out. Test scales with the number of chips tested and their complexity, more than with fab capex.
Which has a clean implication. In a pure the fabs are doubling thesis, the front-end equipment, applied, LAM, KLA, captures more of the dollars. But in an HBM quality and AI accelerator thesis specifically, Advantest's HBM test and Teradyne's ASIC test are clean and crucially less crowded ways to play the exact same trend. They're the road less traveled into the AI build.
And that less crowded point is worth dwelling on for a second. Everyone piled into the obvious AI names. Far fewer people talk about who tests the AI chips. That doesn't make them cheap. Both of these ran hard with everything else, but it does make them a more differentiated way to express the same underlying view. Sometimes the most interesting pick and shovel is simply the one nobody's pointing at yet.
So put the two together. Advantest is the pure memory and HBM lever, the more direct answer to who helps the memory makers expand. Teradyne is the AI compute and physical AI diversifier, a wider net over the whole AI and automation build, with the robotics wildcard.
And both share the family traits of this entire series. Both are high-moat duopolists, both are Tier 2 cyclical, both are richly valued, and both ripped with the rest of the complex on that big semiconductor equipment day. The framework discipline says the same thing it said every episode. Wonderful businesses, demanding prices, into a cyclical high. Understand them. Don't chase the gap. So the net read. For the memory expansion thesis specifically, Advantest is the cleaner pick, the HBM test king whose demand rises with every extra layer in the stack. Teradyne is the broader play, AI compute test plus a genuine, if unproven, physical AI robotics leg. Together, they are the test hole on the entire AI build.
And it rounds out the picture nicely. We've now done the front-end toolmakers and the back-end testers, the companies that build the wafer and the companies that certify the chip. We don't predict. We test the theses as the evidence lands. Next episode, we go to the single most HBM-specific choke point of them all: bonding. The art of stacking the memory itself, and the technology war quietly being fought over it. Thanks for spending part of your day with us, and tell us in the comments, the pure memory lever or the broader AI and robots net? And that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you, genuinely, for spending part of your day thinking this through with us.
The whole idea of this show is pretty simple. We hold a handful of theses about the world, and we test them out loud, together, a little more each day. No crystal balls, just curiosity and a willingness to be wrong.
So if that's your kind of thing, stick around for the next one and tell us where we're getting it wrong. Honestly, the pushback is our favorite part.
Until next time, take care of yourself and keep asking good questions.